Have you ever seen other creators post awesome fast motion hyperlapses or captivating slow motion shots and wondered, why doesn't my footage look like that? Well, fast and slow motion shots with Insta360 cameras can produce totally epic results, but only if you combine the right frame rates with the right shot types. But what are they? Well, thank God I'm here, because in this video, I'll teach you how to get both of these things right so you can produce epic fast and slow motion effects with your Insta360 camera. If you've ever wondered which frame rates to use for your 360 shots, be sure to stay until the end of this video. Big thanks as always to Insta360 for sponsoring this video, and all shots from the video were shot with the X5, which I'll link below. Although with that said, these same tips will still apply to older Insta360 cameras that have lower specs, as well as future cameras that come out that have higher specs. I wonder if there'll be any soon. All right, so there's 3 different kinds of motion you might want to capture: normal motion, slow motion, and fast motion. No matter which one of these you choose, you'll want to make sure you're always shooting at the highest resolution possible to avoid any low quality results that come from reframing the 360 video into a flat 16:9 perspective. And of all 3, the highest resolution is going to come from the standard frame rate, while you can set it to either 24 or 25 frames per second, which are considered cinematic. For everyday shots, you'll want to set it to 30. This is because most 360 shots involve some level of movement, and having those 5 or 6 extra frames every second is going to help capture that movement more smoothly. So you'll want to use 30 frames per second as your default storytelling frame rate. This includes everyday scenes where you want to show things at the exact speed that they happened in real life. 30 frames a second will give you a natural looking motion and be especially suited to walking and talking, shots of scenery, and travel where you're moving around at a relaxed pace. Chances are this is going to be the majority of shots you take. If you're ever unsure which frame rate to use 30, because it will mean you can shoot at maximum resolution and have enough frames to capture the movement clearly. However, if whatever you're shooting has a lot of movement, this is when you'll want to consider ramping it up to 60 frames a second. And there are 2 reasons you would shoot at 60 frames a second. The first one is actually for non-slow motion shots, because when you're capturing 60 frames in every second and then playing it back at normal speed, the extra frames will help create smoother movement, which can be especially helpful for shots where you're moving around a lot and you might be pointing your camera in multiple directions, as well as if you plan to reframe your shot a lot. Again, with the extra frames, your reframing movements will become smoother because again, they'll be working with more frames every second, and therefore the movement will be less jittery. When I was on holiday in Europe, at least 50% of my shots were shot at 60 frames a second because the style of content I was shooting was fast-paced. I was often moving around quickly, doing crazy camera movements with the X5 on a selfie stick, and the 60 frames per second really helped smooth things out and make these shots less dizzying and more watchable. The second reason you'd shoot at 60 frames a second is, you guessed it, slow motion. And slow motion can be especially powerful when used in combination with moving the camera or reframing your shot. And I produced so many banger slow motion shots while I was away that I posted to Instagram daily. The minimum frame rate for slow motion is going to be 60 frames a second, and this is currently the sweet spot with the X5 between high resolution and high frame rate. With future cameras, hopefully we get bumps with both things, which would mean you would set it to those higher specs. I would say though that 5.7K is the minimum resolution you'd want to shoot with when capturing slow motion shots with any 360 camera. And this is purely because of a crop factor where 5.7K realistically becomes about 720 to 1080p, which is definitely acceptable for social media content, but I just wouldn't go any lower. Well, we currently have options of 100 FPS and even up to 120. This currently requires a resolution of 4K. And in my opinion, it's just a bit low. You also won't want to overdo it with slow motion because an epic slow motion shot usually involves either an epic location or an epic kind of activity or movement where the slow motion helps dramatize it and drag the moment out to become more cinematic and interesting. Whereas if you're just walking down the street, that's probably not going to be interesting in slow motion. If you're doing crazy camera movements like I did as well, the slow motion helps smooth it out. So it feels more like either a drone shot or a dolly shot where the slow motion can smooth out most most camera bumps. All right, so what about fast motion? Well, there are two types of scenarios where fast motion hyperlapses really excel. The first one is when there is no obvious money shot. Sometimes you'll be at a location that just isn't that interesting, and therefore playing it at normal speed is going to get boring fast. However, when you speed this same shot up into a hyperlapse, suddenly it becomes like a cinematic drone shot that, when paired with motion blur, is really satisfying to look at. Think of these shots kind of like a transition shot in between your other money shots. These shots usually entail long stretches of road or pathway that go on and can be especially good for travel vlogs or showing off a city or town quickly. The second scenario that hyperlapses excel is in highlighting one single building or structure, where you press record and walk around the structure in a circle like I'm doing here in Vienna, and then in reframing you'll point the shot back towards the structure, keeping it centered across the whole pivot. Then at 16 times speed with motion blur, it will create an awesome pivot effect. And this one's going to be especially powerful for travel and capturing landmarks in a really fun and cinematic way. You can even spin around things multiple times, and this will create a really nice parallax effect with the background feeling like it's moving at a ridiculous pace. Now, as for actually filming hyperlapses, I would recommend doing this in standard 360 video mode at maximum resolution, because while there is this dedicated time shift mode which is made for hyperlapses, I found this one to be a bit hit and miss. The pros of using time shift are that it's capturing far fewer frames every second, and therefore the file is going to be infinitely smaller on your SD card, and therefore as well it automatically applies the fast forward effect by default. However, I don't like this because it removes the flexibility to use that clip as a standard normal motion clip, because if I tried slowing this time shift shot down to a normal pace, the shot is going to be unusable because the original frames weren't captured to begin with. Also, if standard 360 video files are massive on your SD card, you can always just delete them after you've reframed your hyperlapse. But with that said, if you do plan to shoot a really long hyperlapse that goes well over 10 minutes, then time shift mode is totally justifiable. I've found hyperlapses to be the single best effect that I've used Insta360 cameras for over the past 10 years, and are so easy to achieve, where all you need to do is record 360 video for between 1 and 10 minutes, then speed it up either 16, 32, or 64 times in the Insta360 app. Very little creativity is required right there when you're shooting, but then later on after you've reframed, you look like a creative genius because of how amazing the hyperlapse turned out. So in summary, while most shots you take will probably be at the regular 30 frames per second frame rate, by using fast and slow motion effects, you can easily turn good moments and locations into great ones. And if you're at a really cool location and you're not sure which of the 3 speeds to go with, try all of them. It's not going to take you long, and I can guarantee that one of them is going to be a total banger. And if you're not sure what kinds of camera movements to use with your Insta360 camera, in this video here, I'll share the 3 layers of an epic 360 video that utilize 3 very unique kinds of movement.